Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red. Question 4. And I brought up a tweet here. How do you think the Huskers will do this year? Speaking of walk-ons here, you tweeted this out, February. You go, I have the utmost respect for the walk-on program. I love that it gives more hardworking, tough, and sometimes overlooked players a chance. That being said, in order for it to be successful, it has to be ran in an efficient manner. I respect what Coach Rule and his staff are doing. All right, with that in mind here, talking about walk-ons and physical practices and all these good things, what are your thoughts here on how this offseason is going and kind of going into next year? You already talked about even some of your basic expectations or what you'd like to see, at least the bowl game. What are your thoughts?
You start with Matt Rule being hired, okay, and you look at what he did immediately. He only had a couple 3 weeks before early National Signing Day. And what he was able to accomplish in a quick, short amount of time was very impressive. And then you look at what he's done since. He has made a point to go around the state of Nebraska. I don't want to say mend fences, but make sure to build relationships with high school coaches, high schools, people around the state. Like, that is clearly an important thing to him. Obviously, you're going to see it because, hey, it's Matt Rule. Everybody wants to take a picture and post it, and that's awesome. So it's very public for people to see without him, advertising it, because he's just trying to do the right thing and other people get excited, and it's going to build positivity, momentum around the state. Also with recruiting, we've had a hard time in-state recruiting the past few years, and that's something that's going to immensely help with recruiting. You look at, his big thing is development, and one of his favorite times of a football season is actually the off-season, winter conditioning, mat drills, spring ball. And, I loved when, 1 degree when they were pushing the sleds outside in the snow or whatever. And I thought that was awesome because, and he was talking about, we're going to learn to do these things in cold weather. There's times in the past I'd go watch a practice and they'd be inside the Hawks and I'd be like, aren't we playing Wisconsin outside in the cold on Saturday? I'm not trying to throw shade on anyone in the past. I'm just relaying accurate stories. And it was one of those things that didn't add up to me. And so he's trying to build that physical toughness, the physical callus, especially to the cold weather, the mental toughness. Like, hey, there's nothing new about playing in the cold. We've been doing this since January, pushing sleds in the frickin' snow in 1 degree. And I love that. I love what he's building. I love that he's honest, but not over the top blunt. If you listen to what he says, he'll tell you how he truly feels. But he's not going to be overly direct or what could be misconstrued sometimes as rude or something like that. And, after the first spring practice, he had a lot of positive things to say, but then he would say, I don't know how good we are. He would be just honest. He's like, I don't know. It almost like if you just kind of read between the lines, he'd been up for a long time. He even admitted he got up early that morning and he was kind of tired. You could almost see like, man, this might be a little bigger than he had anticipated because they've got talent, but then you get on the field. Well, how can you make it applicable to the football field? And so maybe he got his first glimpse of that. He's probably also a little bit tired too. I think people forget coaches are human beings as well. But it was kind of like, oh, this is, we got a ways to go here, which I'm sure he expected.
Yeah, I think part of what has helped him get off to such a good start is maybe the hiring process. Very unique. How often do you have a 70-day search where the coach that you end up getting was available for 60 some days of it, had a chance to come to Lincoln on a surprise weekend with Trev and the family and get to see a game day and really get an opportunity to, through in his head, also have his family give him the go ahead. Yes, take this, Dad. But to have 60 days worth of time to go, nope, I don't want it. I'm going to get paid out by the Panthers anyways. I can go golfing, or no, this is what I want to do. And he took over a position. I think of so many other coaching staffs when this happens, it's you get fired one day and within 3 days you get hired. Now, boom, build something and you go from there. And he really looks like he knew what he was doing because he had put some thought into it. Now, speaking of thought, tomorrow night we're going to have Glenn Snodgrass on, the head coach at York, and he was at the coaches clinic. And over this weekend. Now, I went to the coaches clinic from the last year of Solich all the way through the Frost era. Loved it. Every single year, go there and you watch speakers and you also get to watch practice, a scrimmage. And I want to bring up something with you. This last weekend, a lot was made of the fact that they went live with the quarterbacks. They did the physical practices and took the green jerseys off essentially and let them get hit. I'm a big fan of that. I was at the practice in 2005. I don't expect you to remember the specifics of it, but I was at the scrimmage, 200 play scrimmage that Coach Callahan had, where Joe Daly walks into the practice, the starting quarterback, and by the end of it, Zac Taylor walks out of it, the starter. And it was you and Jay Moore, Lakeven Smith, and Titus Adams and Stuart Bradley literally beating the crap out of those quarterbacks. But the difference with Zac was he would get up, he would call one of those, 50-word plays in the West Coast offense. He'd complete a 3-yard out. He'd move the ball. And then kind of by the end of the practice or the scrimmage, he was starting to, you could tell he was controlling it. And by the end of it, Joe Daly sitting in end zone by himself. I almost felt bad for the guy, but he was sitting over there by himself. And we got out of there. And there was only like 200, 300 of us in the stadium. And I called my uncle after that. And I'm like, well, we have a new quarterback, and it's not Harrison Beck. It's not the big, 4-star Florida kid. There's this Zac Taylor guy. I don't know anything about him other than what I watched today, but he clearly was in control of things. Now, on this show, I've been an advocate of taking the green jerseys off at times. Don't just beat the guys up just to beat them up, but take it off. Let these guys play, because you'll never learn about them if you don't play. You can't get better at football if you don't play real football. You'll never learn about that if you don't take those jerseys off every once in a while. So I loved it when I heard that. And I guess I'm curious on your standpoint. I don't know if you remember the scrimmage that I'm talking about, but also what were your thoughts when you heard that they took those jerseys off and let the guys play?
I believe I remember the scrimmage. I believe the scrimmage was supposed to be an hour and it ended up being about 2 hours. Callahan just kept adding and adding plays, and he wanted to see who would respond, how you'd respond, and what you'd do. And as you talked about, I'd mentioned Zac's one of the toughest quarterbacks I've ever met. And a guy like Zac's going to respond to that. I'll never forget the first time I saw Zac. And I think I've shared this in the past, maybe when he first got there. I don't know. But I remember watching him in winter conditioning. I didn't know anything about him. And I remember watching him, and he'll tell you he's not the fastest guy in the world. I was like, I really hope he's good at throwing the ball. Like, that was kind of my instant reaction. And he's heard that story, so it's okay that I share that. Obviously, Big 12 Player of the Year by the time he was done as a senior, so I think he did all right, which is why I'm okay with sharing that story. That scrimmage, or this past Saturday's or weekend scrimmage where Rule took the jerseys off the quarterbacks, either way you look at it, I remember when I first got to Nebraska, and we would do scrimmages, and they'd been doing it this way forever. So I was, who was I to say anything? I never understood why they kept the green jerseys on, because how are you supposed to get used to hitting and being hit and running people over, especially we were running the option back then, so I didn't quite understand that. But, I wasn't going to question what they'd been doing for decades. And I love it. You got to be smart with it. The obvious, everyone knows why they put the green jerseys on. The quarterback's a pretty important position. You don't want to bang him up. You need him for the games, but you're going to get hit in the game. So how do you build up that toughness, that callous, that mentality to be tough like that? You got to do it a little bit. And I think the offseason is a perfect time to do it. If you get banged up, you got more time to recover, get healed, get better. If for some reason you can't practice, it gives somebody else an opportunity while you still don't have a game for months. So to me, the offseason is the perfect time to do it. Maybe early on in camp as the games get closer. Obviously, I wouldn't do it very much. So I love that. And I think it speaks to the mentality that Coach Rule's trying to impart to the team as a whole.
I know we're going to get going here pretty soon. But but before we do, let's talk a little bit expectations next season. Bowl game tends to be, when I'm talking with people, at the very least, we really want to get back into that. So I'm not throwing out 6-6 as a record. In fact, what I'm doing this offseason, I'm calling it the race to 6. Let's get to 6 wins. Now, if it takes 6 weeks and we're 6-0, awesome. Let's reevaluate our expectations. Let's go win 8, 9, 10, whatever, right? But if we're 5-6 and Iowa's coming in here on Black Friday, then win the damn game. Let's get to 6. Let's get to a bowl game. That still has to mean something. That's a tangible proof that all the great things I think we're seeing. I'm buying in. I'm drinking some Kool-Aid right now. But the tangible evidence has got to be that let's at least do the bare minimum of what we used to take for granted in this program, the state, for decades. Let's get back to a bowl game now. Do you agree there, or what are your expectations really for next season?
I think that's how everybody feels. I think it's kind of unanimous across the board. The cupboard is not bare. Yeah, they've got to kind of build from the ground up when it comes to culture, when it comes to taking the ability that we have on this team, which is the 4th most talented roster in the Big Ten Conference, and applying that to the football field, which you take a bunch of track athletes, that doesn't make them great football players, but at least you've got the talent and the ability and good size on this team in the trenches and things of that nature. You got building blocks, more than Rule had at Temple, more than he had at Baylor. Which was a menagerie when he took it over. So much so that he called and asked his dad, who's a high school football coach, hey, can you come help me? And his dad literally basically lived in his office during his first year or two at Baylor while he was building that program. So he's got better building blocks. And then you look at the schedule for the second year in a row. This is not a murderer's row schedule. Obviously, there's some tough games on there. But you look at our non-conference. I don't know. Is the toughest non-conference game Colorado? I don't know. Probably, yeah. I guess. That's going to be the most hyped non-conference game. They had one win last year. So I think we can get – you talk about the race to 6. I think we can get a decent amount of wins right out the gate. And I believe we play Michigan again. I think we go to Wisconsin this year, to Iowa. But Wisconsin's got a brand new coach. They're changing their offense. Iowa's just trying to get to 25 points a game, or they're going to have to get a new offensive coordinator. So, again, I think 6 wins is very, very doable. And if he can do that, I think Husker Nation would be happy.